Good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Kam Johal Show. Hope you enjoyed the summer whilst we were off the air. So I certainly had a fantastic month. And things have changed. You know, we're allowed out into the wild. So we've been to some social events and met some fantastic members of the family. And it's been lovely to catch up. So we're going to talk about that today in terms of a more reflective idea of what's gone on. Literally locked up since March last year, and only recently have things turned. And of course, it's quite apt that we're here once again at the IXL Centre, courtesy of my dear friend Atul Lakhani. And these guys are able to host venues again, so weekday weddings are taking place, and people are back mixing with their families, as we should. So about time we had some normality. And my guest today is none other than a very dear friend of mine, Suk Randhawa. Welcome, Suk.
Thank you.
Thank you. And great for you to drive up all the way from London to come and see us today.
I know, there was a bit of traffic, but I made it.
Great. So listen, you know, you're an international coach, somebody that travelled extensively prior to lockdown. And of course, you've been in this country for since at least March last year.
Yeah.
And as have I, you know, we spent a lot of time going, travelling up and down the country, travelling abroad, as did lots of people. So tell me, what have you done in terms of changing your life, your outlook, and what are your thoughts?
Wow, so lots of questions there. I'll try and address them. But yes, it's been an absolute 180. So before the pandemic and before we were put into lockdown, I used to travel all over the world. So I do international transformation and coaching, as you said. So I would not be in the country. So this is actually the longest I've been in one place. And my friends and family are always joking about it. So for those of you who are watching, how am I coping? And I'm itching to get away. So I haven't put the passport away. That's still sitting on my desk. But it has really changed me. It really changed my life. An absolute 180. I appreciate so many different things now that before I probably took for granted. So my family, my friends, my loved ones, and being able to really have quality time with them. As before, my life was very fast paced. It would be getting on one plane to the other plane or to London and meeting after meeting and client after client. And then all of a sudden that stopped. And it was a challenge, I'm not going to lie.
Sure.
It was a bit of a challenge. You know, right? You used to travel a lot, so it's something that all of a sudden I had to readjust to this new normal, as we started calling it.
Isn't it, being in one place
for
so long? So tell me, there must have been stages.
Yes, there was excitement.
Yes,
absolute excitement. I don't have to pack a case anymore. That was probably one of the most amazing things, that I didn't have to decide what am I taking for the next week or next month, and then I could just have access to everything.
Yes.
And I was able to cook, because when you're on the road, you're eating out,
of course.
If you don't do it often, it's exciting and it's fantastic. But when you're doing it all the time, the novelty wears off.
I was going to say, so one of the things about travelling is the people that love it the most are the ones that don't do it.
Yes.
Right?
It's true.
I always used to say, you know, the most glamorous travelling is coming home and telling your friends.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they think it's great.
Don't tell them.
But living out a suitcase really isn't fun, is it?
No, it does take its toll, because you miss out on birthdays, functions, events, and just general things. You miss out. There is lots that you know, the phrase FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, but you are missing out. But obviously there's the plus and the amazing side, because I've got friends all over the world, and that was an absolute blessing. When I was travelling, I missed my pillow. I missed the Indian masala tea. I remember getting stopped at customs for having masala tea, or like I don't know how to say it in English, BCR masala.
Okay.
I'd have
ground masala.
Ground masala. There you go. And I used to get stopped at customs every single time, and because I can't live without it. But then obviously pandemic hit, living at home. So that's amazing. So you can have. You asked me, you know, the stages. So that was exciting, and it was new, and all of us.
So you were actually excited, because I'm thinking. So you got this stage, which is the world.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden now it's home, isn't it?
Yeah.
So confinement, not being able to go anywhere other than a walk. Remember those days?
Yes.
When Boris said, do anything but go for one walk every day?
I know. Oh God.
So you were excited by that?
Oh yeah, I was back to absolute the beginning. It was, oh, this is something different. And if we think of human psychology and the way we are, anything different is exciting because it's the unknown. And I think most people didn't, well, even if you did, that's fantastic, didn't know it was going to last this long.
Sure.
But then, you're right, what happened is it then became monotonous, and then it became, well, how long is this going to last? We can only go on those walks. And that did take a lot of adjustment for me, and it really, I had to learn to work in a different way. And thanks to technologies like Zoom and Teams, I started using social media platforms a lot more, so LinkedIn, but I was used to that to a point, but the people I was working with, they weren't used to that.
Of course.
So everybody was on this journey together. And I think for people like myself, we went on the journey and we're digitally savvy, so that was fine. The older generation, they struggled a little bit more. So even people that I work with, and family and friends that are slightly older, they didn't have access to technology. Or if they did, it was more to browse YouTube and bits and bobs like that. So I think that was a struggle for them. But for me personally, my social life, obviously, everybody's social life dissipated. There's one poignant moment actually that I was I started working a lot more. I wasn't attending the house party app. Do you remember that house party app? Everybody was doing those. I stopped attending them because I thought I'm on Zoom all day and I was having Zoom fatigue.
Yes.
And so I disconnected from that. And a good friend of mine actually turned up at my house.
Okay.
Unannounced. So if you're watching Casual, she turned up, bought my a lovely selection of cheeses and chocolates. So I'm a bit of, and she forced me to get out on my bicycle.
Okay.
So we used to ride bikes here and there, but it wasn't something that I did on regularly. So she came. I was in my pajamas. I'm not going to lie. I was like, what's happening here? And she took me out, and it really reminded me that the importance of reconnecting with nature, getting out of the house, finding a new routine. And since then, I started riding my bike. I can't just go from the life that I had to then just working from home. I needed to build a new routine.
Sure.
And that's when I started riding the bike. I actually joined a gym locally on the local farm.
Okay.
It's a fantastic gym, very COVID safe. They were doing classes inside and outdoors when we weren't allowed to socialise inside. But it took resilience. It took resilience to really, and I was lucky and blessed that I've got a good friendship circle to this gym outdoors. But lots of people don't have that, and lots of people. So personally, I've had my journey, and it's been a challenging journey, and it's kind of been at peaks and troughs. But I know so many people that haven't been blessed with that or don't have access to those things. So I think for them, I can't even imagine how challenging it's been.
Yeah, because if you live in a city centre apartment, where do you go? What do you do all of a sudden? That first weekend during the lockdown, I drove into London, picked the twins up, came home, and the phrase that I used with the kids was, if we're going to face lockdown, there couldn't be a better place than where we're living. Right, very blessed again, like you said, countryside, lots of walks, not a lot of people about. But obviously for people in city centres, that was very, very different experience, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
And that's where all the stresses and the strains came, and and I think we've
no, absolutely not. So as you said, domestic abuse rates skyrocketed, and it's heartbreaking because all of a sudden, and people turn to alcohol, people turn to abuse, people turn to so many different vices. And I think we now need to address some of those because they've been undercover and we've not really known about them. And it's great that you do talk about this subject. I love your page because you're constantly talking and addressing these topics. And same, so for example, Unilever have published, made it public, their domestic abuse policy. So for companies that don't have this policy, they can go onto the Unilever website and also the LinkedIn page. I'll post it on my page as well, and we can post it on yours. And you can go on there, and it's got absolutely fantastic information. Can I just in Punjabi as well, maybe?
Of course.
So ਜਿਹਨੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਡੋਮੈਸਟਿਕ ਅਬਿਊਜ਼ ਹੁਣ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਲੋਕਡਾਊਨ 'ਚ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਸੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਔਕੇ ਪਾਲਿਸੀਆਂ ਪਬਲਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨੂੰ ਅਬਿਊਜ਼ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਕੰਪਨੀਆਂ ਲਈ ਆ ਪਰ ਆਮ ਲੋਕੀ ਵੀ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਭਾਜੀ ਤੇ ਪੇਜ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਲਾਉਂਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਪੇਜ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਲਾ ਦੂੰਗੀ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਡੋਮੈਸਟਿਕ ਅਬਿਊਜ਼ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਤਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ because that's obviously a very big subject but we need to also think about like mental health, right? So that's another thing that I find is people are not talking about it as much.
As a community, so it doesn't exist. We ignore it, and we can't ignore it.
We can't.
We can't ignore it, right? Because it touches everybody.
Yeah.
But as a community of people, you would think it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right? But then as a community of people, we think alcoholism doesn't exist. We think domestic violence doesn't exist because we're brushing it under the carpet.
Yeah.
But this is not that time, is it?
No.
This is a pretty lucky again.
Yeah.
Right? There's no reason that you should be suffering.
No, absolutely not.
And if you're suffering and you bring that out, and there's people in your community that think there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
That's not your community.
I couldn't agree more.
Right?
I couldn't agree more.
That's not what community and family is all about, is it? And so I think we've got the wrong end of the stick. But unfortunately...
It absolutely is. I've come across so many people in my line of work that are suffering in silence, and it's people don't talk about it.
No.
I know we're talking about our community, but honestly, I've come across the board. It's a subject that is still shunned upon, and you're supposed to be strong and macho and be able to kind of get on with things. But there's underlying issues. If we think about social media, to a good friend of mine the other day, and we didn't have social media before, so if you did something and it was fine and you got on with it. But if we think about the Olympics, right? How many athletes have withdrawn because of their mental health?
Incredible, isn't it?
Incredible.
First time I've ever read about those things. Yeah.
And we had this lovely conversation, and it was, is it because, and obviously we don't know the root cause, and a lot of respect to the athletes that denounce and they're trolling them and they're spending a lot of time scrolling, because that is a concern now. A lot of people, a lot of youth, probably more than the older generation, are spending so much time to get the validation from social media, which then has and we were just talking about this earlier today, has a direct correlation on your mental health. So we need to stop people doing that. We need to control. So any gratification, and I've made a post, and how many likes, and it's social media is made for that, right? We all know that. We've seen the films. But then that has a direct correlation to mental health. And then we've been in a pandemic for, 16 months now. So we think about, yes, it's been great to stay connected, and I said that myself, it's been fantastic. But where's the balance that how many people are overly relying on that and get their gratification? So we need that balance, and we need to make sure that people talk about issues to their friends. So pick up the phone, and so if you don't feel comfortable to pick up the phone to somebody, you might not, because like you said, now society is not open. There's so many charities out there that you can reach out to anonymously and have those conversations. I myself have now trained to become a mental health first aider.
Yes.
I just felt compelled to do it. I mean, as you know, I'm a lifelong student, so I'm constantly trying to self-develop. But in the pandemic, strong people who I thought were mentally strong ended up in a situation, if they were living in central London in a flat by themselves, all of their where they would get their resilience from, where they would get their recharge batteries from, that disappeared.
Yes.
And they needed an outlet. And it's statistically proven that men talk less than women.
Well, we're told not to, aren't we? And I think the other thing is, that's creeping up. So, and men are taught, we teach our boys, don't we?
Yeah.
Man up and all those phrases that we use. And then they come to haunt us, don't they?
They do.
I was talking to a dear friend of mine, and we were talking about the problems with men and suicide in Africa.
Yeah.
So I said, listen, we don't need to go to Africa. We're in the first world, 5th largest economy in the world, do we? To see what the problems are. And I don't understand it. I just do not understand that in a society like ours, we have all the money in the world. And why we can't address these issues. But the other thing is, though, and we're digressing slightly, but in 70% of suicide cases, they involve drugs and alcohol.
Probably a release. It might be a release if they haven't got an outlet. And so abuse, I don't know enough about the subject, but they might be going to that to kind of get some sort of release because they don't feel confident or comfortable to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And from what I do know is if we spot the early signs, we can stop people getting to that, because it's a spectrum. So if we can spot the early signs, if you see somebody's becoming withdrawn, not picking up not replying to your messages, not calling, not coming to the social events. I would urge everybody just to check in. You know, we've all heard that phrase, how are you, but how are you really?
Yes.
So those, and I have to be honest, I've seen on my personal Instagram pages, and I've seen a lot of young men, cousins of mine and friends of mine, that are actually posting a lot about mental health, men's mental health. I had a cousin over a few weeks ago. I think it's about we need to change the narrative, right? So the narrative has always been stiff upper, so we've got the worst of both, right? Stiff upper lip, and then our culture is quite male dominated, macho. But what we need to do is we need to create an environment where you have an outlet to talk to each other, and you can then, it's okay not to be okay, but as for men as well, because I think women, you know, I don't want to make this a gender thing at all. I work in diversity and inclusion, so it's not about that. But it's about making sure that everybody has access and everybody can speak up. And there's been a number of documentaries on BBC, Channel 4, on this subject, and I would urge everybody to watch them. And I would say now, again in Punjabi, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਰਿਸ਼ਤੇਦਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਦਾਇਰੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਸਿਓ ਠੀਕ ਆ but that ਉਹ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਸਾਈਨ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ ਕਿ ਬਾਹਰੋਂ ਠੀਕ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਪਰ ਅੰਦਰੋਂ ਕੁਝ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ, and that happens to older people and younger people, and then you know you put your war paint on and then you get out. And especially I think it's really important now because, as you said before, we're coming out of this, you know, we're coming into, you put it so eloquently earlier, we're getting into the big bad world again, and we're so
saying apne aunty guanti da rishta da jo behavior badal gaya tusi puch lavo na. But then sometimes we think nahi yaar assi nahi puch lana, it's like you're poking nose in somebody's business. So there's a very fine line. There is,
right?
That you need to track. The other thing I think is one of the biggest problems that's happening is that
just like that constantly.
But you don't know anything, expressions, tones, all the things that you miss out on. So you know, there's no easy answers.
There isn't. There is no easy answer. But I think if we all do a little bit and we all check in on our social circle, and if everybody does that, we can stop people taking things so far down the line that they feel there's no return.
I think it's that old mother phrase, we would clean the world by cleaning our own doorstep, right?
Absolutely.
So you know, your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, if you just ask one person, and then they won't think that you're being nosy, because it's a relationship thing, right? You already
have the relationship.
You don't need to ask. So what we're looking for is behavioural change, aren't we?
Behavioural change, but change is one person can then drive multiple. If we all change one thing, that's how change happens. You know, I work in culture change, as you know. When we're trying to do cultural transformation for large organisations, it doesn't happen overnight. We don't go in and say, right, we're going to do this, and our culture is going to be privacy first, or we're going to make sure, you know, that's not how it. We have to think of a strategy. We have to work out which language is this, and I'm not talking just language as in, you know, French, English, Spanish, Punjabi. What language does that business function understand?
Yes.
So we then have to do that. So if you're talking to your parents, react. If you're talking to your child, how are they going to best react? So it's all about understanding that, and then we can make changes. And I think that's what we can do. And I love the fact that you talked about having conversations, because that's one thing that the pandemic I've done so much more of, because I was guilty of one of those people that would be you know, in WhatsApp groups and never replying because I was always busy, and then what I did, I was just bish bash bosh. But what I've realised is the value of time, value of quality conversations. You just can't beat it. You just can't. And because I'm not jumping on that next plane, and because I am at home, and because we do have more time, and I know we have more time, but we're very busy. But I think that's the key. If we all start having conversations, real conversations, and be present.
Yes.
So that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about today, is just being present. Because we're not anymore. As a system, what's happening on my social media page, or Amazon, one click and it's here. It's that instant gratification.
Yes.
So I know the pandemic has been heartbreaking, and lots of people have, you know, lost, and I know people personally as well. But if we then look at the positive aspect of it, we've been able to have quality interactions, we've been able to slow down, we've been able to get to know ourselves more. And I think that if we want the world to open and we go right back into that fast-paced life and then, you know, constantly on, I do want to keep some of that quality of the connections and the conversations and listening. Like just this morning I was talking to my dad, and we had, and I think I mentioned this on our last conversation, and it was beautiful. We sat, we had a cup of tea, and if I had to get to the office for us, he's not getting any younger, so every moments and every conversations that we have, and this morning was extra special because obviously I'm in India with the men's hockey, so we got so anybody who hasn't watched it, we got a bronze, so
wow,
yay, so super proud, and the women are playing for the bronze position tomorrow, I believe.
Excellent.
So it's that, and sport, you know, sports has been fantastic, right?
Yes.
So if we think about, we've had the football, we've got the Olympics, and all of those.
Do you think it's been too much?
No, we're a sporting household. So any type of sports that's on is on at home, and so I watch quite. I mean, I'm not a huge football fan, but I did watch a lot of the games, and I followed England right to the final, and I think that was fantastic. And you know, if we think about Gareth Southgate, his leadership style, so impressive. Absolutely
incredible. But they say that, don't they?
Yeah.
Cometh the hour, cometh the man, and Gareth certainly came, didn't he?
Absolutely.
So, and you know, for a while we dreamt.
We did.
But then, usual stuff. So,
I know.
But I want to talk about, you know, your own experiences, because of course, you know, you discovered cycling again, but then you had
to call an ambulance, and then I had to go to A&E. So there was, thank you NHS, a huge respect for the work that you do. It was in the moment, I don't think I realised what had happened, and I have to be honest, it was horrific, but it could have been a lot worse. And for me, I've never been injured, so I've been very lucky and very blessed. I've never been injured. And that day, we'd been on a cycling trip with my friends, and I was leading the trip, and I took a fall. I thought I was okay. The adrenaline rushed in. I thought I was okay, and then only when I looked at my knee did I mean, I won't explain too much for viewers. It's quite gruesome. It was not nice to look at. I almost fainted, and I had to go and get a double layer of stitches done, and it was quite challenging. But at first, being a resilient person, I thought I was okay. So I carried on, and you know, got back on the horse, as you will, and just carried on with life. And then when I had my consultation and I had my MRI, and then I realised, whoa, this, and I have to have a crutch. I can't just go actually back to normal life. And it's been a journey. So this was on the 12th of June, if memory serves. And it's been a journey because I was using a crutch, and I had a tiny glimmer into what life would be like if physically challenged, if you have a permanent disability that you can't, if you're in a wheelchair, whatever that disability might be. Because all of a sudden I was having a crutch, and the things that I would take for granted, being able to hold a coffee or tap on the oyster or drive, I couldn't drive. And I'm living in a village now, and all of a sudden, pandemic, living in a village, cycling has been the best thing for me, and all of that was taken away. So it had really understand now, that's a big statement, I understand a tiny amount on how difficult it is if you aren't able to kind of, you have challenges that in your life, and that you can't just go about your day without thinking. I had to think about the tiniest of things.
Of course. So did you ever, you know, think and blame anything, like blaming the pandemic, for instance, thinking that if this wasn't going on, I wouldn't be cycling now, I'd be travelling, this wouldn't have happened? Did you know, I don't imagine that you're a blame kind of individual, that you ever play the victim, but did it ever cross your mind?
Honestly, no. I always look for the lesson, and I always take, how can I grow from this? So, I mean, who do I blame? Probably me for not seeing the rock or the side of the curb. Did I have those moments of, you silly woman, yes. But I didn't blame the pandemic, I didn't blame anyone. I actually thought, right, and that this has happened, and now it's even more important in my diversity and inclusion work. So equity, diversity, inclusion, I work in that area. It's even more important to speak up, and even more important to think about, okay, so that's a potential visible disability that I had for a short period of time. Yeah. What can we be doing as a society? Invisible.
Yes.
So I didn't blame anything or anyone. Yeah. I actually thought, wow, how lucky am I and how blessed am I? I'm going to be okay. I'm having my physio, I'm having my treatment, I'm going to be okay. But there's certain people that have to try and navigate the tube system.
Yes.
And there's so many tube stops that are absolutely, you just can't. You simply cannot get on and off if you're in a...
stairs are too much for a fit person, honestly. You know, heaven forbid.
I know.
If you're not fitting well.
Yeah, and it was debilitating for me. Yeah. I felt, and I pride myself on being fit and healthy and quite independent. I went on a trip and I had my rolly suitcase and a crutch, and I thought I was going to be fine. I got to the train station and I thought, this isn't going to work. And luckily people helped me, and and it was a short journey, so I managed to get through. But
daily thing
as a daily thing.
So the important thing for me, what you said was that you look for the lessons.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of successful people that do well in life tend to look, because that's a positive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, something's happened, you can't do anything about it. You know, it's gone now.
Yeah.
So what can I learn from this? Is that the kind of thought patterns that you have when it regards to everything that you have in life?
Yes, yeah. I do. I think, what can I try, I'm a big believer in self-development and self-reflection. So, and this is in my personal life and my professional life. So if there's knockbacks, or if there's anything, or if a project doesn't go quite as well, I try and work out, it's my management consultant in me as well, what's the root cause? Why did that not happen? And how can I stop it happening again? And a good friend of mine, Jorge Rodella, I used to work with him in when I worked for Cemex. He once said to me that if you're in a situation, you made a decision, or if I went through a path, and then in 6 months' time it was a different result, I don't believe I can beat myself up on that.
No.
Because I did what I did based on the information that I had. But I can learn from that, because then if I was to be faced with that situation again, what would I do differently?
Yes.
And my mum always says, if you can fix something, don't worry about it. If you can't fix something, don't worry about it. So you should use that. I always say that I've read many books in coaching and mentoring, but honestly, there's nothing I've read in a book that my mum hasn't already taught me or shown me. So yeah, absolutely love that. But that stays with me, because we as human nature, we spend so much time dissecting the past and worrying about the future.
Yes.
And very little time here, living in the now and being present.
Yes.
And it's just getting worse. And I don't want to get on my soapbox and sound like an auntie and all of that, but it is getting worse.
Yes.
And if we think about it, and I'm just cognizant of the fact that I've been speaking English the whole time. So मैं just मैं पंजाबी कहना सीखा कि हुन जिहड़े हैगे असीं पिछला बहुत सोचदे हां तां अग्गा बहुत सोचदे हां ते जिहड़ी है भुल जांदे हां. And living in the now. Exactly. Yes. And we're not going to get today back. And if the pandemic's taught us anything, value the today, value the moment. Time is so precious. That's what I try and do. If I have a setback or anything, I try and dissect. Hadn't done that, you might have had a different result. But I'm not going to beat myself up about it. No. I'm going to try and learn and develop and be more present.
So, tell me something. You're an international transformational coach, right?
Yes.
So the thing about good coaches are that they have to be really good students. So, we're coming towards the end of another show.
This is for everybody. Acceptance. Big thing is you have to accept yourself. And don't lie to yourself, because what I find in my work is people lie to themselves more than they lie to others.
What do they lie about most?
They have a lot of negative narrative So disbelief. So there's that kind of, I can't do this, I'm too old, or I couldn't possibly do that. And we need to stop that. We need to stop the negative narrative, or it's too late.
Yes.
So then that could be for, if you're past a certain age, you think certain things are too late. But I don't believe anything's ever too late.
Yeah, so it's not the right time.
It's not the time. I couldn't possibly do it.
I'm not old enough, I'm not young enough.
Yeah.
I haven't got enough money, I'm not qualified enough. So it all comes from I'm not enough, doesn't it?
It's all I'm not enough. But you are enough. You absolutely are enough. Everybody's different. You are enough. So I would say self-reflect. What journaling is fantastic. So if you're actually honest with yourself, accept who you are, and you must have seen the graph. I wish pen and paper, I'd get my whiteboard out. So everybody thinks that where you are and where you want to be, there's a straight line, but actually it's up, down, up, down, up, down, and then just when you think you're getting there, you give up because but you can't do that.
Yes.
So I would say self-reflect, accept who you are, and really focus on the one thing you want to change. If you want to achieve something, do something toward it. It takes, I think, 21 days to change a habit, and then even longer, obviously, to make it a behavior pattern.
Yes.
But what you do is, if you set yourself a plan and you have yourself a mood board or an agreement, or whether it's in your notebook, on your phone, whatever that might be, you don't need to get the whizzy books. But I personally like pen and paper. I'm old school, and then I'm not distracted by my phone.
Yes.
And then you just think, what is it about me that I want to change? And just do one thing every day that is going to. I used to ride my bike, but every day I decided I'm going to ride my bike. And now, pardon the accident, but now I can.
Fantastic. Amazing. Listen, thank you so much.
Thank you for having
Lovely
me.
to have you.
Thank you.
And maybe we'll do another one of these.
Yeah, if you'll have me back.
Absolutely. So guys, that's all we have time for tonight. I hope you heard some noise and some music in the background. That's life, and it stood still for far too long. So we're at a fantastic event at Lakhani, so thank you for allowing us to be here today.
Thank you.
It's now a functioning building again, so I've been here on 2 occasions when it's been silent and it's not nice. So we've got people viewing for weddings, we've had food tasting here this afternoon for couples that are getting married with their families. So there is normality returning, and thank God for that. So be careful, because we never know. So tentative steps, let's take it easy. So I want to thank my guest today, Sukhrunava, and share some more views about a lot of subjects that we're going to be covering in this series of the Kam Johal Show. I will see you back again at 7 p.m. next Thursday. Until such time, take care, look after yourself, and good night.